In the Middle Ages, dying of illness was not an event. It was a drawn-out torture, almost a routine. Nobles and commoners shared the same fate: helplessness before their own bodies, superstition instead of medicine, and a meaningless string of procedures and rituals that barely concealed the fear of the inevitable. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who has joined us. Now get comfortable. We're starting. You open your eyes because, as always, someone pulls aside the heavy drapes with unnecessary vigor. Light filters into your chamber, not a golden glow, but the sickly gray pallor that passes for morning in the wet stone fortress of Angevin lords. You are not yet 39 years old, though if anyone asked you how you feel, the answer would be approximately 3 centuries. Still, there is no time to count the years. Today, just like yesterday, just like tomorrow, you are expected to rule, command, and feign a robustness that has always been more rumor than reality. The air smells of last night's fire, damp straw, and something sour. Your body aches, which, to be fair, is not news. It always aches. Being a noble in the 12th century means you exist in a permanent, undiagnosed state of discomfort. But this morning, the discomfort feels slightly sharper, more insistent. There is a dull pounding behind your eyes, a subtle sense of internal unrest. You decide to ignore it. You, Geoffrey, Count of Anjou, Duke of Normandy, husband to Matilda, father to that surly youth Henry, and the linchpin of a dynasty in the making. Yes, you have woken up on the day of your death, and you have no idea. That is the great joke the universe plays on you, that you can be important enough to have minstrels write songs about your deeds, and yet not important enough to be warned by your own body that the end is nigh. You stretch, which is a mistake. Every joint, every sinew, every relic of past jousts and campaigns protests in chorus. Your back crackles. You remember, with misplaced nostalgia, the time a horse trampled your foot during the siege at Le Mans, because compared to this vague malaise, a broken bone was blessedly simple, something to show, something to fix. What you feel now is formless, but somehow you know, if you cared to admit it, which you do not, that something is very wrong. Servants appear, gliding silently as is expected. You notice their faces look a little too concerned, but you brush it off as the usual mixture of reverence and terror. They offer you the usual watered wine and a hunk of bread that could double as a weapon. You nibble at it, because that is what is expected of you. Routine is a powerful thing, even in the face of impending doom. Your mind drifts as you chew. There are petitions to hear, disputes to settle, letters from Normandy demanding your attention. There are always letters from Normandy. You wonder what trivial complaint or veiled threat will arrive today. This is the machinery of rule, endless, joyless, relentless. But underneath the administrative monotony, You feel the tremor of illness growing inside you. Of course, you have no language for this. Your understanding of the human body is medieval, literally. Humors, vapors, the influence of stars. These are the terms in which your world understands disease. You do not know that you are hosting a bacterial infection or that your organs are beginning their slow, sullen strike. All you know is that you are more tired than usual, that your mouth tastes of metal, that your hands are shaking slightly as you reach for a goblet. You have lived your life in fortresses, tents, and council halls. You have seen men fall in battle, cough out their lungs, stagger away from fevers. You have watched priests wave relics over the dying, and you have seen exactly how much good it does. It has never occurred to you that your own death will not be grand, nor glorious, nor even meaningful. You, like all men of your rank, have been raised to believe you are special. But, dear reader, the truth is this: even the most special men die as drably as the peasants who till their fields. This morning, you do not know any of this. You drag yourself upright, every movement accompanied by the secret symphony of discomfort, and begin to dress for a day that in retrospect will matter only because it is your last. Your attendants lace up your tunic with awkward haste. One of them, bolder than the others, asks if you slept well. You grunt, which is the closest thing you will ever offer to vulnerability. After all, you are a Plantagenet, and Plantagenets do not admit to weakness. You rise, and you begin to move through the routines of power. Your body, like your retinue, is starting to betray you in small, almost polite ways. For now, you refuse to notice. There are matters to attend to, names to remember, faces to recognize, grudges to nurture. You are busy with the business of staying alive and in control. You do not know that by sunset you will be closer to death than you have ever been. The day outside the window looks just like any other. The sun struggles behind the clouds. Birds circle above the courtyard, uninterested in human affairs. Somewhere, a bell tolls for the mass. You rise and go forth, ignorant of the quiet storm brewing inside you. Your last morning has begun. Your morning routine unfolds like a tired ritual, and, as always, you see no reason to interrupt it for minor discomfort. You have survived worse: infected wounds, endless campaigns in the rain, that questionable stew you ate during your time in Maine. What is a little fatigue? A slight trembling in your hands, a head that feels too heavy for your neck. You are, after all, a man of your time. Ignoring bodily complaints is the only exercise you regularly practice. As you make your way through the chilly corridor, the stone beneath your feet feels unusually hard. Perhaps it always has. Every step sends a quiet signal of protest up your legs. You frown, not at the pain, but at your own irritation. Nobles do not wince, not in public anyway. Your aides flutter around you, silent and anxious. They are well trained, these people. They know better than to ask if you are well. They know, too, that you would rather limp across the entire county of Anjou than admit to needing help to cross the hall. Pain is for peasants. Lords endure. You try to focus on the daily business. There is a minor noble here to air a tedious grievance about his neighbor's sheep. The sheep, apparently, have been trespassing on land for 3 generations. You do not care about the sheep. You do not care about the land. You care only about the pounding in your temples, but you are determined to look interested, as a good ruler should. It is all about appearances. You force yourself to sit up straight, to glare at the supplicants in that practiced way that has made you so many friends among the local gentry. Your mind drifts. If you blink, the world swims. You attribute this to boredom rather than to the possibility that your body is staging a quiet coup against you. In your mind, nothing is wrong except everyone else. Someone hands you a cup of weak wine, and you clutch it, grateful for something familiar, even if it tastes like rainwater filtered through an old boot. It steadies you for a moment, or at least you pretend it does. You feel sweat prickling under your collar, despite the cold. You consider the possibility of a fever, but discard it. Fever is for the feeble. You are not feeble. You are just tired, that is all. As the morning drags on, the complaints and petitions grow more ridiculous. Someone wants permission to move a boundary stone. Someone else wants you to settle an argument about the rights to collect firewood in a particular grove. You sign documents you barely read, nod at arguments you barely hear. Through it all, you keep your eyes open and your back straight. The show must go on. At some point, a servant offers you a bowl of broth. The smell turns your stomach. You push it away with more force than necessary, pretending to be insulted by the seasoning rather than the nausea gnawing at your gut. Around you, your household exchanges nervous glances. No one dares speak. If you cannot eat, the day is truly off to a remarkable start. You are acutely aware, even in your fog, of how carefully your family observes you. Your wife Matilda watches with eyes like polished stones. Your son Henry, already old enough to notice weakness, pretends not to. His politeness only makes it worse. Your youngest children are mercifully oblivious, occupied with their squabbles and games, but even they seem quieter than usual. Is this how it always feels, or are they learning the first lessons of dread? The pain does not improve. It migrates, crawling from the back of your neck to your ribs, curling behind your eyes, leaving you hollow and irritable. Every cough, every shiver is a personal affront, a betrayal of your lineage. You remember your father's death, how the rumor at court was that he had simply faded, as though death were a matter of bad manners rather than biology. You scoff inwardly. You, at least, will not fade. You will go down fighting, except you are not fighting. You are simply refusing to acknowledge defeat. It is the Angevin way. Ignore the problem until it either goes away or kills you. You have never liked alternatives. It is nearly midday by the time you permit yourself to admit that perhaps, just perhaps, you are not entirely well. You keep this knowledge to yourself. Outwardly, you snarl at a servant who is too slow to bring you a fresh towel. Inwardly, you begin to catalog every tiny failing of your flesh: the cold sweat, the spasms in your stomach, the odd metallic taste that clings to your tongue. You remember the stories told by old retainers, how true nobles do not yield to the frailties of the flesh, how saints embrace suffering with grace. You are no saint, but you have always tried to be a true noble. So you grit your teeth and stand, swaying just slightly as the world leans in and out of focus. You push through, you persist, you ignore. That is what you do. It is not courage, not really, but habit and pride disguised as strength. In the back of your mind, you wonder if this is what dying feels like. But then someone needs your signature again, and the moment passes. Life, like pain, marches on. It is afternoon now, and the castle begins to vibrate with the particular hum of nervous energy that always follows you. Word has traveled faster than you can. The servants are exchanging glances, and somewhere, probably in the kitchens, there are wagers being placed on what ails the Count this time. You are not supposed to know this, but you do. Your house, after all, is built of whispers and intrigue. Your body rebels in ever more creative ways. You notice the ache behind your eyes is now a drumbeat, and your limbs are as heavy as armor. The pain in your joints feels as though it has been carefully sharpened overnight. Every time you try to stand, your knees threaten mutiny. Still, you insist on attending to your business in person. It is an unspoken rule: never give one a reason to question your strength. Never miss an opportunity to demonstrate just how little you care for physical discomfort. Your closest advisors, the men who have made careers out of both serving you and surviving you, begin to move with new caution. Raoul, the old seneschal who claims to have survived 3 famines, asks if you would like to move your audience to your private chamber. You glare at him so hard, he nearly drops the ceremonial keys. Another advisor, this one younger and far too eager, suggests that perhaps you should see a physician. You snap at him that you are not a dying dog to be prodded by leeches and charlatans. You tell yourself it is not fear that makes you refuse, but dignity. The other men, some of whom have been waiting years for you to show the slightest crack, are silent. No one dares suggest that you should rest. Rest is defeat, and you are still in the game, even if it is only by force of will. You are the living definition of going through the motions. If your face is pale, you blame it on the quality of the light. If your hands shake, it is the cold. If your voice falters, it is the fault of the stone walls that suck the warmth from the air. Someone brings you a draught of wine, stronger than the morning's, laced, you suspect, with one of those folk remedies meant to ward off illness. A hint of wormwood, maybe, or a shaving of stag's horn. It tastes like an insult to both medicine and grapes. You swallow it anyway, if only because you want everyone to see you do it. You are still the master of this house, not some trembling relic of a man. Your gaze dares anyone to disagree. Outside the window, the day has faded to a washed out gray. Your mind wanders to all the important business you will never finish, the quarrels among your vassals, the taxes that always fall short, the letters from Matilda's English relatives that you never open. You try to focus, but the edges of things keep going fuzzy. You snap your fingers for a scribe, and when he fumbles his pen, you snap again, just to remind everyone that you are still in command. Your irritation, you notice, is growing with your discomfort. You are annoyed with your advisors for their concern, annoyed with your family for their worry, annoyed with your own body for not doing what you tell it to do. It is a full, rich bouquet of irritation, the kind that only the powerful can cultivate properly. You imagine, briefly, that if you could just bark loudly enough at the world, the pain would slink away out of embarrassment. Raoul coughs just a little and suggests again that perhaps your chamber would be warmer, or at least quieter. You dismiss him with a wave of your hand and insist the business continue. Every minute you spend here is another minute proving to your household and perhaps to yourself that you are not afraid of a little discomfort, not when there are real problems in the world, like border disputes and bad wine. Eventually, a servant returns with a steaming cup of some herbal concoction. It smells vaguely of wet hay and burnt sugar, and you grimace even before it reaches your lips. The servant, probably prompted by your wife, says it is soothing. You drink it out of spite. If nothing else, you will prove that you can drink anything they give you. After all, you have survived worse: Norman ale, Breton stews, the company of your in laws. The advisors gather closer, voices low and eyes sliding away from your face. They talk about matters of state, but their real concern is written in the way they hover, always just out of reach. You can almost hear their unspoken thoughts. He looks worse than yesterday. Should we call the priest? Is it time for the confessor? They do not say it aloud. Not yet. Superstition is strong, and naming death before it is certain is bad luck for everyone. You, for your part, try to ignore the growing storm in your bones. You do not want comfort, advice, or, God forbid, sympathy. You want normalcy, routine, the endless business of rule. You want the ache in your joints to be nothing more than a passing chill, and the burning behind your eyes to be just fatigue. You want to be the man you were last month, last year, in the prime of your command. But the truth is, you are not, and everyone in the room knows it, even if no one dares say it. The room feels colder, or perhaps it is you who is colder, shivering as the fever inches higher. You blame the servants for the draft, the advisors for their lack of wit, the world for its relentless expectations. Anything, really, except yourself. Because if you admit it, truly admit it, then the game is already lost. Your irritation, like your pain, is the only thing you can still control. So you hold on to it, wrap yourself in it, and continue to glare at your counselors as if that alone will keep you alive. Eventually, the clamor of concern grows too loud for even you to ignore. At some point, perhaps in the vague hope of restoring order, your wife, Matilda, sends word for the castle physician. The poor man is dragged from his dark study, his face pinched and anxious, his hands stained from previous experiments, none of which, you suspect, have ended in triumph. He is a learned man, at least by local standards, meaning he can read a little Latin, recognize a handful of herbs by sight, and recite the four humors as if they are gospel. You have seen this physician before during other crises, some of which, you now realize with a cynical smirk, were of your own invention. You recall the time you feigned a stomach cramp to avoid a particularly tedious hunting trip with your in laws. The memory almost makes you smile, but the movement is too much. Your head throbs in protest. This time, there will be no clever escape. You are well and truly trapped by your body, by your advisors, by the entire grim machinery of medieval medicine. The physician enters, trailing the odor of musty herbs, sweat, and faintly of smoke. His robes, once a proud blue, have faded to the color of storm clouds, and there is a suspicious stain on the hem. He bows with more reverence than usual, as though addressing a patient on the threshold of the next world. You grunt in response, making no effort to conceal your skepticism. Medicine, after all, is a field reserved for charlatans and hopeful widows. No one of sense places their faith in leeches and potions. He asks you the usual questions, each one more tedious than the last. How did you sleep? Are you cold or hot? Is your urine pale or dark? Do you ache? Do you sweat? Do you see phantoms in the firelight? You resist the urge to answer with sarcasm. Instead, you grunt, nod, and offer as little as possible, careful not to betray the extent of your misery. If you must die, you would rather do it with your dignity intact, or at least your sarcasm. The physician approaches, holding his hands like a man offering peace to a wounded animal. He presses a clammy palm to your forehead, his eyes narrowing in concentration, as if by sheer force of will he might divine your fate. He sniffs, frowns, and announces with the solemnity of a bishop, "The heat is not natural, my lord." You want to inform him that the entire castle is freezing, and the only heat is the fever baking your brain, but you bite your tongue. He consults with your advisors, speaking in low, urgent tones, as though secrecy might improve his odds. The recommended remedy is as familiar as it is futile: bloodletting, always bloodletting. The physician is convinced that your humors are in revolt, that your blood is thick with corruption. The only logical solution, to his mind, is to drain it out and hope that what remains is purer, more cooperative. You would laugh if it did not hurt so much. Bloodletting is the medieval answer to every malady: headaches, fever, melancholy, even an excess of ambition. You recall a distant uncle who was bled so often that by the end he resembled a faded tapestry left too long in the sun. He died, of course, But the physician declared the treatment a resounding success because, at the very least, it kept everyone busy. Now it is your turn. The physician produces his tools: a shallow brass basin, a clutch of ragged bandages, and a knife that has seen too much action and not enough sharpening. The sight alone is enough to make your skin crawl, but you submit. Pride, after all, is only useful while you are alive. Besides, the whole court is watching, and a true noble endures discomfort for the sake of appearances. Your sleeve is rolled up by trembling hands. Yours, or someone else's, you cannot be sure. The physician selects a vein with the solemnity of a priest selecting a sacrificial lamb. He makes a small, efficient cut. The pain is sharp, but not unfamiliar. You watch, half detached, as your blood pools in the basin. It is dark, sluggish, and smells of iron and regret. The room is silent, except for the dripping sound, a reminder that your life is quite literally running out, drop by drop. The process is slow, methodical, and utterly pointless. The physician watches the blood as though expecting it to sing out the answer to your troubles. When he decides enough has been taken, he presses a linen rag to the wound and binds your arm. You are left weaker, dizzier, colder than before. The physician assures everyone that the imbalance has been corrected. You doubt it, but you nod anyway. No one wants to hear that the old ways are worthless. You are ushered back to your chair, a little paler, a little emptier. The room smells of blood and disappointment. The physician instructs the servants to brew a tea of bitter herbs, to be taken as needed, which you suspect means constantly, until either the patient recovers or gives up. He bows again, promises to return at dusk, and withdraws, leaving behind a trail of uncertainty and the faint hope that this time things might be different. Your advisors murmur, relieved to have something to do. Bloodletting is action, and action feels like hope. You watch them bustle about, pretending you do not notice how they study your face for signs of recovery, of decline, of the end. You would tell them all to mind their own business if you had the strength. For now, you settle for silence. You are tired, so tired, but still you refuse to admit it. You are a lord, a husband, a father. You are not a patient. Not yet. The bleeding is over, but the effects linger. You sit propped in your high-backed chair, arm wrapped in scratchy linen, eyes gritty and half-lidded. The room feels a little smaller, the fire somehow more distant. There is the persistent metallic tang of blood in the air, yours, in case anyone has forgotten who the main event is here. If only your suffering could be bottled and sold as a warning. Be careful, nobility is hazardous to your health. Your counselors, ever eager to be seen doing something, circle the physician's basin as if it might reveal the secrets of your future. Some lean in, pretending to see portents in the color or thickness. Is the blood too dark? Too pale? Is it the wrong season for such blood? Someone suggests comparing it to the last time you were bled, but no one remembers precisely when that was. Illness is so inconveniently regular in these drafty stone halls. You do not miss the way your household's eyes keep darting to your face and then away again like nervous birds. The bravest servant dares to mop your brow with a damp cloth, careful not to meet your gaze. You manage a grunt that is half gratitude, half warning. If there is one thing you have left, it is the ability to intimidate the help. If only your body were as obedient. The after effects of bloodletting are familiar but unwelcome. You feel colder, as if the fire has retreated into itself. Your hands tremble with a new intensity, and a faint ringing in your ears rises and falls like distant bells. You remember stories from childhood, how the soul sometimes leaks out with the blood. If that is true, you think grimly, you are probably half ghost already. Yet, in the logic of your age, this is all for the best. Pain is improvement. Weakness is progress. The more miserable you feel, the closer you must be to a cure. So say the experts. The physician returns once or twice to examine your wound, declares the procedure a success, and prescribes more rest. Rest is a word you have never truly respected. It is what men do when there is nothing left to fight for. You choose to interpret it as sit quietly and glare at anyone who suggests otherwise. You notice a new tension in the room. Your family and closest advisors are drifting around you with the anxious choreography of people awaiting an unpredictable storm. They whisper about which relics should be fetched from the chapel, which saints' days are approaching, and which hymns might best suit your condition. No one mentions last rites, not yet, but the word hangs in the air like a rumor, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to say it. By late afternoon, you are so drained that the act of lifting your hand to your mouth feels like a minor campaign. The herbal teas keep coming, each more bitter and unpalatable than the last. You drink them anyway. If nothing else, the routine is a distraction from the throbbing pain in your head and the dull ache in your limbs. You remember a time when the hardest thing about illness was being forced to swallow your pride. Now, it is simply swallowing. The castle's rhythm adapts to your decline. Meals are quieter, footsteps softer, laughter nearly forbidden. The entire household waits on your next move. You wonder, with bitter humor, if the staff might be wagering how long you will last, or whether the cooks have started preparing extra salted pork just in case there is a funeral to feed. You would laugh, but your chest hurts too much. The loss of blood does not bring relief. Instead, it brings a kind of hollow clarity. Your thoughts wander back to the times you have ordered bloodletting for others, servants, soldiers, even the odd horse. It never seemed so barbaric from the other side. You remember joking with your captains about how bleeding kept the peasants calm, an idle cruelty that now seems both accurate and deeply unfair. Your patience, which was never in great supply, is running thin. Every question, every well meaning suggestion, every tremulous inquiry about your comfort grates on your nerves. You snap at your servants, growl at your counselors, and silently curse the physician who has disappeared to consult his books as if knowledge is hidden on some forgotten page. If only it were that easy. In your more lucid moments, you wonder how much longer you can pretend that everything is under control. Even your youngest child seems to sense that something is wrong. She brings you a wilted flower, her small face set in an expression of grave importance. You take it, not trusting yourself to speak. For a moment, your irritation softens, replaced by something like regret. Then the pain surges back, and the mood is gone. The day drags on. The blood in the basin grows tacky and dark. The fire sputters, the light fades, and the household tiptoes around you as though you are already halfway to the grave. You cannot blame them. You feel as though you are watching your own life from a distance, as if you have become a character in someone else's tragedy, a familiar fate for noblemen in these times. But still, you hold on out of pride, out of stubbornness, out of the sheer refusal to let this absurd process be the end of you. If bloodletting is all that stands between you and oblivion, you think grimly. You have already outlasted most of your ancestors. Night falls. You shiver under the covers, listening to the castle breathe around you. There is nothing left to do but wait for whatever comes next. If sleep comes, you take it as a temporary surrender. If not, you stare into the dark, counting your remaining breaths, each one a tiny act of defiance. As darkness settles like a damp cloak over the fortress, a subtle but unmistakable panic begins to infect your household. It starts with glances, furtive, sidelong, exchanged between your wife and the most trusted of your counselors. They think you are too tired, too distracted to notice, but you see everything. Being a Plantagenet has trained you for many things: war, negotiation, relentless boredom. Above all, it has taught you to notice the smallest signs of trouble in those around you. Now you watch as your family and household begin to orbit you like anxious moons. Matilda, your wife, always composed, always clever, has become a study in controlled distress. She hovers near your chair, a book of prayers clutched so tightly her knuckles pale. You know she does not truly trust in saints or relics, but she reads aloud anyway, voice steady and low. The words are as old as the stones in the keep, repeated countless times for countless dying men, and you wonder if any of them ever found comfort in such recitations. You do not, but you keep the observation to yourself. Matilda is doing what she can, and you respect the effort, if not the method. Your son Henry, now grown enough to imagine himself a man, lurks in the shadows of the chamber. He watches everything, silent and brooding, his expression equal parts fear and calculation. He is already learning that the line between waiting to inherit and wishing for a death can be uncomfortably thin. You have always tried to teach him strength, decisiveness, the art of showing no weakness, but tonight you catch him biting his nails, eyes darting from you to the advisors and back. You wonder if he is rehearsing the speeches he will make after you are gone, or if he is genuinely frightened to lose his father. The younger children are kept away, hidden in distant chambers with their nurses. You hear their muffled laughter, brief and out of place, and for a moment you are glad. They are too young to understand the theater of noble suffering. Let them stay innocent a little longer. The world will catch up with them soon enough. Meanwhile, your household becomes a stage set for anxiety. Servants rush to and fro with bowls of broth, with water heated and cooled by turns, with damp cloths and sharp smelling poultices. Each time the physician enters, the tension ratchets up a notch, as if he might deliver a verdict at any moment. Even the dogs sense something is wrong. They whine outside your chamber, paws clicking nervously on the flagstones. Advice comes at you from all directions. One of the older women insists you must sleep facing east so that healing winds might reach you. A monk suggests a new litany of prayers, longer and more penitential, just in case. Someone else recalls a story about a saint who survived a similar fever after swallowing a pebble from the local shrine. You wonder if they have considered simply burying you with the pebble in your mouth for efficiency's sake. Every act, every offering, every whispered suggestion is laced with desperation. The balance of the household is shifting, and everyone knows it. For all the trappings of nobility, for all the power and pageantry, death is always personal and always lonely. Those around you cannot help but prepare themselves for a world in which you are no longer the sun around which they orbit. Your wife's hands tremble when she brings you a fresh cloth for your forehead. She murmurs something about hope and faith, but her eyes are fixed on the physician, searching for reassurance he cannot give. You want to tell her you are not afraid, not of pain, not of death, not of what comes after, but the words taste false even in your mind. Instead, you nod, let her press the cool fabric to your skin, and try to look grateful. In the hallway, you catch snatches of hurried conversation. The priest has been asked to prepare certain rites just in case. The cook is worried that there will not be enough salted fish for a wake if it comes suddenly. The chamberlain reviews lists of names, making note of who must be notified, who might be called to witness a last testament. It is all very practical, very sensible, very medieval. Meanwhile, the physician hovers at your bedside, hands steepled, face grave. He claims your pulse is better, whatever that means, but you see no sign of conviction in his eyes. He recommends more broth, more rest, fewer visitors, and perhaps a visit from the bishop. This last suggestion is met with silent dread. Everyone knows what a visit from the bishop means, and it is never good news. Despite everything, your family soldiers on. Matilda sits beside you, reading her prayers. Henry takes up residence near the door, refusing to leave your side. Servants bring ever stranger remedies, each one more unpleasant than the last. A poultice that stings your skin, a concoction of honey and vinegar that burns your throat, a charm stitched with prayers to be worn under your shirt. You let them try it all, not because you believe any of it will work, but because it gives them something to do. Panic without purpose is the most dangerous thing in a household like yours. As the night wears on, exhaustion seeps into your bones, heavier than armor, more suffocating than any wound. You watch the faces of those you love and realize that you are no longer the center of this drama, but only its occasion. The castle itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when grief will be allowed to take the stage. You close your eyes, not quite sleeping, not quite waking, surrounded by the sounds of whispered prayers, soft footsteps, and distant sobs. This is the real theater of dying, and your family, like every noble family before and after, does what it can to help, to comfort, to pretend that the ending will be anything other than what it is. And you, still stubborn, still proud, still clinging to your old battered sense of control, let them. Night deepens, but rest does not come. If anything, the fever grows stronger as darkness claims the corridors. You lie on your back, slick with sweat, covers kicked aside and replaced a dozen times by anxious hands. You drift in and out of consciousness, your mind snagging on dreams that dissolve into nightmare as soon as you try to make sense of them. The boundary between the real and the imagined thins with every hour until your memories become as fluid as your hallucinations. At first, it is merely discomfort, a heaviness pressing against your chest, as if a stone were resting on your ribs. You can hear your own breath rasping, sometimes shallow and quick, sometimes long and slow, as if you are drowning in the air. Each inhalation burns. The pain is no longer just in your limbs, but in your bones, behind your eyes, in every corner of your head. You turn restlessly, seeking relief that never arrives. You see shadows moving in the corners of the chamber, strange and silent. They resemble your ancestors, men in armor, women in heavy veils, all watching with that disapproving look that Plantagenets perfect over generations. You blink, and they vanish, or perhaps they were never there at all. Reality slips away from you like water through your fingers. The world outside your fever narrows. You become aware only of sensation, the dampness of sheets sticking to your skin, the cold cloth on your forehead, the roughness of the linen against your bare arms. Voices drift in and out, a swirl of whispers, prayers, instructions to the servants. You cannot keep track of who is present. Time loses meaning. You are caught in an endless present tense, a moment stretching so thin you can see through it. Sometimes you hear your wife's voice, low and soothing, reading old Latin prayers she half remembers from childhood. Sometimes it is Henry, speaking to you as if you are already gone, promising to take care of things, promising to make you proud. Occasionally, you sense the physician, his hands cold and his words colder. He must drink, he must rest, he must accept the will of God. You want to reply that the will of God would be easier to accept with fewer leeches and more wine, but your tongue refuses to cooperate. You sweat through the night, fever burning away whatever dignity the day allowed you. The servants strip the bedding, replace it, and strip it again. Someone opens the window, and a draft curls through the room, setting your teeth chattering even as your body still burns. The mingled smells of sweat, blood, herbs, and something else, something darker and more final, fill the air. You realize with a cold clarity that you smell like death, or at least you smell like every dying man you have ever visited out of duty. The hallucinations grow stronger. You see faces in the stones, hear your mother's voice calling you home, feel phantom hands pressing down on your shoulders. The fever pulls up old regrets, the brother you never forgave, the treaties you broke, the words you left unsaid to Matilda, to Henry, to yourself. The dead come to visit you, one by one, offering neither judgment nor forgiveness, merely their company. You are surprised to find that this, too, is a kind of comfort. Every so often, reality intrudes. You feel the rim of a cup pressed to your lips, taste a foul broth or some new, bitter concoction. Sometimes you can swallow, sometimes not. You hear the scrape of chairs, the low murmur of prayers, the shuffle of feet on stone. These are the anchor points, the things that remind you that you are still in your bed, still in your castle, still, technically, alive. There are moments when you try to surface, to assert some control. You bark out an order, demand water, insist that everyone leave you in peace. Sometimes your voice is loud enough for others to hear. Sometimes it is just a rasp, lost among the sounds of your own delirium. Each time, the effort leaves you weaker. You fall back into the fever, surrendering to the current that drags you deeper and deeper away from yourself. The hours crawl by. The sun rises and sets, or maybe it is just the torchlight changing as the servants replace the candles. You lose track of time. You lose track of everything except the fever and the dreams it brings. You are not frightened exactly. You are angry, frustrated, exhausted, and if you are honest with yourself, a little relieved. There is a strange peace to be found in surrender, even if it is only the peace of giving up the fight. At some point, someone wipes your face with a cool cloth, and for a moment, the pain recedes. You open your eyes, see Matilda's worried face above you, and try to smile. She smiles back, her expression so forced that it almost breaks your heart. You want to say something meaningful, something wise, something she will remember, but all that comes out is a sigh. She squeezes your hand, and you are grateful. Later, you slip away again, back into the dark river of fever. You know, in some distant, logical corner of your mind, that you are very close to the end. The realization does not scare you as much as you thought it would. Perhaps this is what dying feels like. Just another journey, another siege, another trial. Or perhaps it is simply oblivion, the final forgetting the undoing of every story you have ever told about yourself. The night drags on. Your family and household do what they can. Prayers, potions, whispered comforts. None of it can touch the fever. None of it can pull you back. You are adrift, somewhere between the world of the living and whatever comes after. And still, the heat rises, and you, for all your titles, for all your pride, can do nothing but let it burn. The fever rages on, and now the procession of would-be saviors begins. It starts with the priest, always the priest, summoned at Matilda's urgent whisper, slipping through the corridor with robes brushing the ancient stone, carrying the smell of old incense and greater certainty than he deserves. He stands at your bedside, thumb and fingers poised in holy gestures, muttering blessings in a Latin that only he and God pretend to understand. He is quickly joined by a small flock of monks from the castle's modest chapel. They shuffle in, cowled and red-eyed from lost sleep, clutching relics like talismans against the dark. One brings the femur of a saint. Nobody remembers which saint, though the monk insists he worked miracles for the sick in Aquitaine 100 years ago. Another carries a wooden cross adorned with scraps of faded velvet and dried lavender, evidence of prior attempts to dress up faith in finer clothing. Their arrival is a performance as much as a sacrament. They circle your bed in silent negotiation. Who will sprinkle the holy water? Who will hold your hand? Who will whisper the prayers? Each has his own preferred formula, his own list of saints to invoke. They do not ask you if you want this. Nobody ever asks the dying if they wish to be rescued. The ceremony proceeds on its own momentum, as inevitable as taxes or gout. The chanting begins. It is slow, mournful, and calculated to sound older than it is. The words blur into one another, punctuated by coughs and the snuff of dripping candles. You try to focus on the Latin, to pull meaning from the prayers, but they pass over you like rain on a tiled roof, present, persistent, and ultimately irrelevant. The scent of incense is thick and slightly nauseating. You wonder, not for the first time, if it is meant to drive out demons or simply to mask the stench of illness. At some point, a monk presses a splinter of wood, allegedly from the true cross, into your palm. You are expected to clutch it tightly and feel the comfort of its history. It is rough, oddly sticky, and as comfort goes, ranks somewhere below a warm blanket and above the physician's bleeding knife. Still, you hold it because everyone is watching, and you have long since learned that sometimes dignity is simply the ability to play along. The physician returns during this holy spectacle, looking uncomfortable at the intrusion of the spiritual into his domain of leeches and poultices. He stands in the background, arms folded, lips pursed, probably composing a mental treatise on the incompatibility of prayer and proper bloodletting. The priest ignores him entirely. The room is too full for rivalry. There is only one enemy here, and it has already taken up residence in your bones. Someone tries to spoon another draught of herbal sludge between your lips. You swallow out of habit, then gag. A monk crosses himself. The priest mutters something about patience. The fever, unconcerned, continues its slow, implacable work. Hours pass in a haze of prayers, chanting, and half remembered rituals. Someone waves a reliquary over your face, so close that you catch a whiff of centuries old dust. Someone else anoints your forehead with oil, tracing a cross so many times that your skin begins to sting. It is all meant to help. You believe distantly that everyone here is doing what they think is right. It does not make any of it more effective. When the chanting falters, a monk recites stories of miraculous healings. He tells you of a knight who survived the Black Death after drinking water blessed by the Virgin, of a child cured of madness after touching the hem of a bishop's robe, of peasants who saw angels in the sky and lived to tell the tale. The stories are delivered in tones meant to inspire hope, but you hear only the weary repetition, the same fairy tales told at the bedside of every dying noble from here to Jerusalem. If you are honest, you prefer the physician's brutal practicality to this parade of miracles. At least when the physician fails, you are left with a clear explanation. The humors were unbalanced, the treatment was inadequate, fate was unkind. When the holy men fail, you are left with silence, unanswered prayers, and the sneaking suspicion that you have disappointed both heaven and earth. But to refuse is impossible. You are the lord of this castle, but in sickness you are only one more body for the rituals of the church. You endure the prayers, the blessings, the application of relics and oil, the constant muttering about saints. You even accept the offer of confession, not out of true repentance, but because you know it will be expected. You confess, in the most general terms, to pride, impatience, the usual sins of a nobleman. The priest nods, satisfied, as if a few words can tip the scales of judgment back in your favor. By the time the holy men withdraw, shuffling away in search of sleep or stronger faith, you are exhausted. Your skin glistens with oil. Your hands grip relics like driftwood in a storm. Your ears ring with the echoes of their chanting. You are not comforted exactly, but you are, momentarily, less alone. Night presses in again. The physician returns to your side, ready to prescribe more earthly torments. The servants tiptoe around the evidence of faith left behind. Spilled holy water, discarded candle stubs, the faint smell of incense clinging to the curtains. And you, still burning, still shivering, still caught between worlds, wait for the next round of well meaning interventions. It is, you realize, a peculiar thing to be so loved, so prayed over, and yet so utterly untouched by any of it. But this, you suppose, is the privilege of being both noble and mortal. You get every chance at salvation, and yet death takes you anyway, as indifferent to ritual as to rank. The rituals have been performed, the relics kissed, the priests and monks chanted hoarsely, until even the dogs look bored. Still, you are here, unhealed and undignified, lying on a sweat soaked pillow as your household shifts gears from anxious anticipation to that most universal of medieval customs, desperate hope. Everyone is praying for a miracle, some loudly, most quietly, a few with the air of people who have bet on the wrong horse, but will see it through to the finish. Hope in this castle has become a group project. Your family, your servants, even your oldest, most skeptical retainers begin their day with the expectation that something, anything, will turn the tide. Perhaps the fever will simply vanish, as fevers sometimes do. Perhaps the relic truly holds a fragment of divine power, waiting for the right moment. Perhaps, for once, the holy men's mutterings will reach the correct frequency to summon celestial intervention, as if God is simply waiting for the right collection of prayers before bothering to save a Plantagenet. You are the focal point of all this hope, whether you like it or not. In your lucid moments, you observe the various forms it takes. Matilda, ever practical, prays with rigid, unyielding posture, as if she can force heaven's hand by sheer willpower. Henry, on the other hand, tries to appear above such superstition, but is betrayed by the small way he fingers the edge of his sleeve, lips moving in silent, uncertain prayer. The servants cross themselves in doorways and whisper appeals to saints whose names you have never bothered to learn. Even your gruff old steward, who once declared that miracles are for the idle, now lingers in the chapel, lighting candles and pretending he has business there. You, meanwhile, have an uneasy relationship with hope. Hope has always seemed like a luxury for those who do not command armies or oversee estates. Your life has been about decisions, consequences, and endurance. Now, as you drift between sleep and fever, hope feels less like a comfort and more like a trick, a coin spun on its edge, promising relief but more likely to fall the wrong way. The world, after all, is littered with the bones of lords who pinned their fates on hope and found it sorely wanting. Still, the prayers continue. The castle chapel, rarely crowded except at Christmas and funerals, now sees a steady stream of supplicants. Your household lights candles until the air is thick with smoke and the smell of melting wax. Someone hangs a new tapestry showing Saint Roch healing the sick. You suspect it was purchased on short notice from a passing peddler, its garish colors still too bright, its miraculous scene suspiciously clean. Hope requires props, it seems, and everyone is eager to play their part. The castle itself feels different, as if holding its breath. Meals are muted affairs, servants coming and going on tiptoe, every sound muffled as if you are already halfway to sainthood or the grave. The world outside your room shrinks to a hushed routine of watching and waiting. It is, you reflect, the peculiar tragedy of noble illness. Your decline becomes a public event, and your possible recovery a communal obsession. Some even try bargaining with the heavens. You overhear a housekeeper promising to walk barefoot to the cathedral if you recover, a footman swearing to forego wine for a month, your chaplain volunteering to recite the entire book of Psalms if only God will look kindly upon his employer. You wonder if heaven keeps a ledger for such things, or if the saints, like you, are quietly skeptical of human attempts to sway the divine. And still, the fever holds. You can feel the weight of hope pressing on you from every side, thick, heavy, and ultimately as useless as another blanket thrown over your burning skin. With each failed prayer, each day that dawns without improvement, you sense a subtle shift. The hope is still there, but it has acquired a brittle edge, a nervous tremor beneath the surface. The prayers become shorter, the invocations of saints more hurried. No one says so aloud, but you know what they are thinking. Miracles do not come for the likes of you, not in this world, not in this century. In your weakest moments, you even allow yourself a kind of cruel humor. If a miracle were to happen, would it not have happened already? If the relic worked, would you not be on your feet by now, riding out to hunt or lecture your son about the perils of ambition? Instead, you lie here, every hour a little weaker, every prayer a little more hollow. Hope begins to feel like another form of torment, a slow drip of disappointment disguised as virtue. Still, your household does not give up. The prayers continue, sometimes frantic, sometimes resigned, always with the desperate energy of people who know they cannot truly help. Hope, it turns out, is the only thing they can offer you, even as it slips away in the dark. You wonder, not for the first time, if the greatest cruelty of dying slowly is not the pain or the fear or even the loss of dignity, but the slow, relentless dwindling of hope all around you as those you love run out of words to say and begin quietly to prepare for what comes next. You close your eyes, feeling the tide of hope recede, leaving only the dull ache of expectation. Tomorrow will come with more prayers and more waiting. Whether you live or die, hope will go on, finding a new object, a new cause, a new Lord to hover over, like a loyal but ultimately powerless servant. With hope fading and prayers unanswered, your household turns its focus once more to the tangible comforts of medieval medicine, those curious, half remembered rituals and remedies that are equal parts tradition and wishful thinking. The physician returns, bearing new potions and grim determination, intent on proving that practical intervention still holds some authority in a world where heaven has failed to deliver. You have come to dread his arrivals. He stands at your bedside, shadowed by an apprentice, with ink-stained fingers and the perpetual look of someone who has spent too long inhaling herbs. Today's prescription begins with a flurry of orders, bowls of cold water to be fetched, cloths wrung out, heating stones prepared. We must draw the fever out, the physician declares, as if your body is a kettle that simply needs more attentive boiling. First, the cold compresses, linens soaked in water from the nearest well, then laid across your brow, your wrists, your ankles, The shock of cold is brief, quickly overwhelmed by the relentless heat of your skin, but the process is repeated with the devotion fond of a religious rite. The servants move quietly, trading whispered guesses about whether the fever has broken, glancing at your face as if you might announce your recovery between one shivering gasp and the next. Next comes the opposite approach. The apprentice, barely old enough to grow a beard, brings warmed bricks wrapped in cloth, placing them along your feet and sides. Hot and cold, cold and hot, in alternating turns. The theory, the physician explains, is to balance the humors by confusing them into abandoning their siege on your body. You lie still as your flesh is steamed and chilled in equal measure, a nobleman transformed into a pot roast. Between treatments, you are offered concoctions that would frighten a lesser man. Potions reeking of garlic, honey, mustard seed, and something suspiciously like rotten onions. The taste is foul, the texture worse, but you swallow each dose because resistance is more trouble than it is worth. The physician watches, noting every swallow, every cough, every grimace. The household watches him, as if the act of watching might itself produce a cure. After the potions comes the poultice, a sticky, foul-smelling mass of crushed herbs and wax spread across your chest and left there to draw out the illness. The feeling is halfway between suffocation and drowning in a swamp. You want to tear the mess off, but Matilda gently catches your wrist, murmuring reassurance. You let her, not because you are comforted, but because she needs to believe there is something left to be done. The nightmares are a new and unwelcome feature. Sleep, when it comes, is not restful. You drift in and out of fever dreams, landscapes shifting from sunlit fields to burning forests, voices calling your name from behind doors you cannot open. Sometimes you see the faces of old enemies, leering in triumph. Sometimes it is your own family, standing silent at the end of a long, dark hall. You wake shivering, convinced for a moment that you have died, only to find yourself still tangled in damp sheets, the world more confusing with every return. The physician calls these dreams a natural part of the fever. He suggests that the more vivid the dreams, the closer you are to a crisis, a turning point where you will either recover or be lost for good. The word crisis is uttered often as if naming the moment will give you control over it. You suspect it is simply another way of saying, we do not know. Nobody does. Other remedies are suggested and, when possible, attempted. Your household remembers every tale of miraculous recovery, a honey and wormwood tincture drunk by a distant cousin, a poultice veined from boiled nettles worn by a forgotten uncle, a charm sewn into a nightshirt by a grandmother who survived 3 plagues. Desperation breeds creativity. The kitchen is raided for anything remotely medicinal. The herb garden is stripped bare. Your chamber becomes a warehouse of failed hope. Bundles of dried lavender and rosemary are hung over the bed to purify the air. Someone lights a fire of juniper and wafts the smoke over your body, while the children's nurse mutters protective spells she half remembers from her own childhood. A peasant woman from the village is even smuggled in to lay her hands on your feet, promising that her touch can pull the poison down and out. She looks terrified. So does everyone else. Nothing helps. The compresses and stones, the draughts and poultices, the charms and prayers, all are met with the same relentless fever, the same downward drift. At times, you almost wish someone would simply declare defeat, close the curtains, and let you drift away in silence. Instead, every new remedy is another opportunity for hope, another chance for disappointment, another small humiliation endured in the name of care. You are grateful for the effort in a distant way, but mostly you are exhausted by it. You wonder if it would not be easier to die quietly without all the fuss. No more potions, no more compresses, no more watching the people you love. Pretend that there is still a battle to be won. But that is not the way of your world, your rank, your family. The rituals of medicine continue because to stop would be to admit defeat. And so you let them do as they must, drifting between dreams and waking, between heat and chill, between the nightmare of illness and the nightmare of their devotion. You are, for now, still alive, but you can feel the tide turning, the crisis looming, the sense that soon, very soon, no remedy will matter at all. The present slips and warps, a river of fever and restless agony, and so you do what the dying often do. You drift backward. The future holds only a narrow, darkening road, but memory, at least, remains wide and full of detours. You find yourself roaming old corridors, some stone, some smoke, some constructed from the half light between waking and sleep. At first, it is just snatches, a familiar face glimpsed in the fever's fog, the scent of autumn leaves in the old orchards at Angers, the clang of sword on shield echoing from days of training. Your earliest memories bubble up, the taste of honey stolen from the kitchen, the bracing chill of a river crossing in spring, your mother's rare laugh, softer than legend suggested, carried down a hallway by accident. These things come to you unbidden, as if your mind is desperate to keep living, even as your body declines. The images grow clearer. You see yourself young and brash, armor shining, banners snapping in the wind, the thrill of command new and intoxicating. You recall the first real battle you ever witnessed, standing stiff in your too heavy mail, terrified that everyone could see you shaking. You remember the relief when the fighting ended, not from victory, but simply from surviving. You think about the countless times after that, the noise, the blood, the stink of fear and sweat, and always the terrible unspoken relief at the end. Now, here in this stifling chamber, you remember the lighter days too. Feasts in great halls hung with green boughs and laughter, long summer evenings hunting with your brothers, riding hard through fields so green they seemed unreal, your horse's mane tangling in your fists, the sun hot on your back, your own voice shouting challenges into the wind. You recall the first time you saw Matilda, how sharp and serious she was, how little she resembled the simpering maidens of song. You remember the shock of respect you felt, the way her words cut through the posturing of men twice her age. You remember your wedding, the chill of the church, the weight of the vows. Later, you remember the quiet moments, her reading by firelight, her eyes meeting yours across a council table, the rare evenings when the two of you spoke like equals, if only for a breath. Your children rise and fall in these memories too. Henry, fierce and clever, always watching. The others too, bright smiles, quick tempers, sticky fingers snatching at your cloak. You realize, with a pang that stings sharper than any fever, how many days you lost to meetings, campaigns, the endless machinery of power. You recall, for the first time in years, how small Henry's hand felt in yours, and how long it has been since you simply held him, or any of them, without urgency or purpose. Not all memories are kind. Regrets gather at the edges. Men you failed, promises you broke, times you let anger or pride outweigh good sense. You remember harsh words flung in the heat of argument, the cool, proud silence that followed, the friendships that never quite recovered. You see, in the grainy theater of your mind, the faces of the dead, those you sent to war, those you left behind, those whose names you only remember now, when it is too late to change anything. Your mind wanders to the world outside this room, the fields, the rivers, the towns where people live and die, never knowing the name of their Lord. You wonder what they think of you. Do they curse your taxes? Whisper stories of your victories? Or more likely, do they barely remember? So busy are they with their own burdens. You are forced to admit that the great affairs of lords and kings are little more than background noise in most lives. The parade of memory is relentless. Some moments return so vividly, you are sure they are real. The taste of warm bread in winter, the scratch of your father's beard, the ache of loss when he died, leaving you suddenly the man of the house. You see castles rising stone by stone, hear the clatter of hooves before a raid, smell the dust and wood smoke of a distant campaign. All these things seem more solid than the present, more convincing than your own dying body. At times, you catch yourself speaking aloud, naming names long vanished, answering questions from years ago. You feel Matilda's hand in yours, steady and cool, grounding you in the now. She listens, perhaps understanding, perhaps just being kind. You try to tell her what matters, what you have learned, how quickly power fades, how even the strongest men are made small by time. The words tangle on your tongue. It is too much to explain, and she already knows. You drift between memory and waking, comforted and haunted in equal measure. Some visions bring peace, others only sharper regret. But the stream of the past flows on, indifferent to your fever, unbroken by pain or fear. You hold these memories close, aware that soon even they will slip from your grasp. Your body fails you, but your mind refuses surrender. If you cannot have the future, you will make do with the past, a parade of moments, victories, failures, love, and loss. The story of a life seen whole at last as it unspools in the final dark. Your world is shrinking. The broad corridors of memory and the crowded room of anxious family have both faded, replaced by the tight, airless space of the sickbed. Every hour leaves you weaker, more transparent, as if you are being whittled down from lord and master to mere patient, a body to be managed, a name to be whispered, a responsibility to be passed from one cautious set of hands to another. Once, your word filled these halls with urgency. Now, when you speak, the words stick to your tongue, heavy and slow. Even when you manage to croak a command or question, it is answered not with the snap of obedience you expect, but with gentle, patronizing nods or, worse, polite silence. The more you try to assert yourself, the more apparent it becomes. Your power, like your strength, is slipping away, replaced by a fragile, almost comical dependence. You can no longer rise without help. It takes two servants and Matilda's steadying grip to shift your wasted body from bed to chair and back again. The indignity stings more than any fever or wound. You try to keep your eyes on the wall, to pretend you are above such things, but you feel every moment of it. The awkward lifting, the hasty rearrangement of pillows, the sheepish apologies when a knee or elbow knocks painfully into yours. You grit your teeth and pretend not to notice. Eating, too, has become a public affair. Someone must hold the bowl, another must spoon the thin broth toward your lips, and a third hovers with a cloth, ready to wipe away any spills. Once you would have laughed at such fussing. Now you barely taste the food, too busy swallowing your pride along with each mouthful. Your family and household do their best to make this routine feel normal, chattering, offering compliments to the cook, pretending this is just another meal. But the effort shows. Every spill, every cough, every wince is noticed by all. There is no more privacy, no more dignity. Each new day brings the further loss. One morning you wake and realize you cannot move your legs as you wish. The next, your hands tremble so badly you cannot hold a cup. Your voice, which once could silence a hall with a word, is reduced to a croak that struggles even to reach the end of your own bed. The world has become a stage for your helplessness, and your family the reluctant audience. You try to give orders, to sign a document or dictate a message, but your advisors exchange glances before obeying, if they obey at all. They lean in too close, speaking in the slow, exaggerated tones usually reserved for children or the dying. When you growl at them to stand back, they only nod, pat your arm, and ignore your wishes. You find yourself despising their kindness, their attempts at reassurance, their subtle, unconscious shifts from deference to pity. Even your thoughts betray you. You drift, lose track of time, confuse dream with waking, the past with the present. Sometimes you imagine you are in a tent before battle, or riding out with your banner held high. Then you wake, gasping, tangled in sweat soaked sheets, the cold dawn pressing against your fevered skin. There are moments when you are certain you are speaking, issuing orders, defending your lands, but all that escapes your mouth is a mumble or a sigh. Your body is no longer yours. You have become an object to be moved, fed, bathed, watched. Your attendants murmur to each other in the corners, discussing your pulse, your skin, your breath, as if you are already beyond hearing. The physician checks your tongue, your eyes, your urine, always with that practiced air of distant concern, as if your failing flesh is a puzzle to be solved before supper. You are poked, prodded, turned, and inspected like a prize pig at market. There are humiliations you never expected to face, needing to be cleaned like an infant, your clothes changed by others. The awkward business of relieving yourself under the careful eyes of a servant who tries not to meet yours. You remember the pride you once took in your bearing, your appearance, the way people stepped aside when you entered a room. Now, they tiptoe around you, lowering their voices, stepping lightly, lest the dying man be disturbed. Matilda remains at your side, composed as ever, her face a careful mask of calm. You know she suffers to see you this way, but she never shows it. She reads to you, holds your hand, strokes your brow when the fever spikes. Her presence is both comfort and torment, a reminder of all that you have lost and all you still stand to lose. Your son Henry, once so eager to impress, now lingers at the edge of your vision, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. You see the confusion in his eyes, the dawning awareness that the man he feared and admired is vanishing before him. You want to tell him something, anything, to help him understand, but you no longer trust your voice or your words. This is the new order of your world, a constant negotiation between acceptance and resistance, a daily inventory of lost abilities, a slow, relentless surrender to the inevitable. You are still alive, but less and less yourself with every passing hour. You try to hold on to what little remains, your pride, your memories, your stubborn refusal to yield, but the walls are closing in, and every day you feel a little less real. If you could rage, you would. If you could cry out, you might. Instead, you lie still, trapped in a body that will not obey, surrounded by people who love you, serve you, pity you, and are already beginning to let you go. As your strength ebbs and your days become a fog of pain and routine, another drama unfolds in the quieter corners of the castle, the drama that always accompanies the illness of the powerful. You are no longer the only focus of attention. While your family tends to your fever, your court and household have begun tending to the future. It is an ancient dance, rehearsed in every castle, from the Scottish border to Sicily, the slow, measured circling of ambitious men and anxious women, each calculating what your absence might mean for their fortunes. You catch the signs even through the haze. There is a new urgency in the way your advisors speak to each other, voices pitched low, eyes darting to see who is listening. Papers are shuffled, inventories checked, keys handled with extra care. You know the look, those sidelong glances, the half finished sentences, the sudden silences when you stir. You have watched the same ritual play out when other lords grew frail. Now you are the frail one, and the ritual feels both familiar and unbearably personal. Your council meets more often, claiming to be managing affairs in your name. At first, you believe them, but soon you notice that not all messages reach your bedside anymore. Some decisions are made without your input, minor things at first, then larger. The steward, always eager, now seems emboldened, offering unsolicited advice on matters that were once your sole domain. The chancellor spends hours in the scriptorium, drafting letters you have not approved. You begin to wonder who those letters are meant for. The older knights, your veterans, pay more frequent visits, sometimes lingering awkwardly by your door. They ask after your health with forced cheer, but you see the questions behind their eyes. Will there be a new commander soon? Will their lands and titles be safe? The younger knights, less sentimental and more ambitious, spend time with Henry, offering advice, sharing stories, making themselves useful. Henry, for his part, does his best to look above it all, but you notice how his posture has shifted, how he listens more closely to those who flatter and promise. The castle corridors become busier. Messengers come and go, not always through the main gate. A few minor nobles, rarely seen at court, suddenly reappear, ostensibly to wish you well, but their visits stretch longer than the polite minimum. Some bring gifts, rare wine, a bolt of silk, a jeweled cross. You recognize the tactic, offering tribute, buying favor for a future that is already being negotiated. Even Matilda is drawn in. She meets more often with the priest, with your senior advisors, with the steward. You know she is trying to safeguard the children, to secure their inheritance, to make sure the vultures do not descend too quickly. You admire her composure, her shrewdness, her ability to cloak worry with courtesy. But you also see the strain, the sleepless nights, the way she watches Henry and the younger children as if measuring how soon she must trust their fate to others. You are not blind to your own part in this. You remember far too well the calculations you made when your own father grew ill, how you weighed alliances, counted enemies, considered whether you should act with patience or seize the advantage. You know that even the best and most loyal must prepare for the inevitable. Still, there is a bitterness to seeing your legacy, your hard won power, treated as a prize to be portioned out. Every visitor, every whispered conversation, every closed door is a reminder that the world is moving on, sometimes with you, more often without. You feel yourself fading, not just in body, but in influence, your grip on your own life slipping as surely as your grip on the bed sheets. It is not just as the loss of strength, but the loss of relevance, a quiet, everyday death before the final one. Your role becomes ceremonial. You are brought important documents to sign, but the ink is already dry. You are asked your opinion, but only after the decision has been made. The courtiers and clerks reassure you that all is as it should be, but their eyes say otherwise. They are polite, deferential, almost tender in their handling of your pride. The more you insist you are still in charge, the more gentle they become, and the less you are consulted. You find yourself watching Henry most closely. He is the true focus of attention now. The ambitious gather around him, the cautious offer him their loyalty, the old offer him advice. You see in his eyes the familiar mix of anxiety and anticipation, the calculation that every heir makes when the old order crumbles. He comes to you for counsel, and you give it as best you can. You want to warn him how quickly a lord becomes a memory, how ruthless the world will be. You want to prepare him, but also to protect him from the very intrigues that swirl outside your chamber. At night, when the castle grows quiet and only the candles keep vigil, you think of all the men who schemed for your favor, who placed their hopes in your patronage, who feared your anger and sought your blessing. You wonder who among them will remain loyal to your son, who will shift allegiance, who will wait for weakness. You hope, almost desperately, that you have taught Henry enough, that you have left your family with more than debts and enemies. You realize, with a kind of exhausted clarity, that even now your death is not entirely your own. It is a public event, an opportunity, a vacuum that must be filled. The future you have shaped is already being divided, bargained, and prepared for a world that will belong to others. And so, as you lie there, helpless, ignored, fading, you become a spectator at your own succession, watching the slow, inevitable turning of the wheel. The world does not pause for grief or sentiment. It simply shifts its attention, moves on, and leaves you behind. If hope is a dwindling ember, then the confidence of your physician is a roaring, illogical blaze. Medieval medicine has never met a complaint it cannot make worse, and so, as your body weakens and the air of the castle thickens with uncertainty, your physician insists that new efforts must be made. In a world where death is expected but never welcome, there is always one more remedy to try, one more treatment to endure. The procedures begin again with the physician's greatest hits, bloodletting, of course, as if the last round was just a warm up act. You are given no choice. The explanation is as familiar as it is hollow. The fever is stubborn, the humors are out of balance, and a further release of blood may prompt the illness to flee. You suspect your body would rather flee than your illness at this point, but you grit your teeth and submit. The knife, blunter than before, is pressed once more to your skin. You are so weak that you barely register the prick. The pain is distant, muffled by exhaustion. The sight of your blood pooling in the bowl is strangely hypnotic, proof, at least, that some part of you still circulates, even as the rest withers. The physician nods with satisfaction, as if this small ritual might wrestle your fate back from the abyss. The remedies grow stranger. A steaming poultice is prepared from goat dung and sage, packed in rough linen and strapped across your chest. The smell is indescribable. The sensation, equal parts burning and itching, reminds you of a rash you once caught sleeping outdoors during a campaign. The physician explains in the tones of a man quoting ancient wisdom that such a poultice draws the evil from within. You wonder if it might not be simpler to just invite the evil to leave. Next, you are forced to drink a concoction so foul that the memory of it lingers even through your fever. It is a thick, tepid brew combining crushed garlic, honey, sheep bile, and something else you would rather not guess. The logic, you are told, is that bitter and sweet together will confuse the malady, coaxing it out through your pores. You cannot remember if you are supposed to sweat or vomit. In the end, you do a little of both, and nobody is sure if that counts as progress. Compresses come and go. Hot stones wrapped in wet cloth, cold water splashed over your shins, layers of herbs pressed against your temples. Your head throbs, your skin crawls, and every new remedy promises a moment of relief, quickly replaced by fresh discomfort. When you shiver uncontrollably, the servants rush to bury you in furs. When you burn, they peel everything away, dousing you with well water as if to extinguish a blaze. You drift in and out of sleep, unsure if the chills are from fever or frustration. At some point, the physician brings leeches. He sets them upon your arms, your legs, the crook of your neck. They attach themselves with obscene eagerness, wriggling and pulsing as they draw blood that is by now surely more remedy than life. The sensation is nauseating, a creeping, alien discomfort that leaves you feeling even less yourself. The physician beams at the sight, convinced that the leeches, unlike your human attendants, have no agenda but your cure. A new round of prayers accompanies every fresh torment. The priest is never far, ready to bless the remedies, to mutter invocations over your pale skin, to sprinkle holy water in the hope that it might accomplish what goat dung and garlic cannot. The monks continue their chanting, their voices a steady drone beneath the groans and the retching. If music could cure, you would have recovered days ago. Matilda watches all of this with grim endurance, her lips pressed thin, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She no longer protests the physician's suggestions, but you see the doubt in her eyes. Henry looks away during the worst of it, as if ashamed that medicine could be so undignified. The servants, to their credit, do what they are told, wringing cloths, fetching water, cleaning up after every failed miracle, each time glancing at you to see if the old lord remains beneath all this handling. There are moments when the pain is sharp enough to break through the numbness, but mostly it is the humiliation you feel, the parade of treatments, the lack of privacy, the endless, fruitless effort. You remember boasting once that you feared nothing but boredom. Now you realize how much you underestimated suffering and the slow, public unraveling of your body. The castle smells of illness now, of herbs and sweat, blood and bile, incense and rot. The old stone walls have seen generations of dying lords, and you wonder if the echoes of their final hours are still trapped here, rising up whenever another nobleman's time runs short. There is a heavy inevitability to it all, a sense that you are simply fulfilling your part in a centuries old play. In your more lucid moments, you marvel at the optimism of those around you, their willingness to keep trying, to keep hurting you in the name of healing. You almost want to thank them for their faith, misplaced as it is. But mostly, you want it to stop, to be left alone, to let the world go on without further intervention. But that, you know, is not the medieval way. As long as you breathe, there is something else to try, some new procedure to endure. So you grit your teeth through the latest round of remedies, clinging to the faint hope that pain itself might be proof of life. Each fresh misery blurs into the next, a relentless, exhausting sequence that leaves you weaker, emptier, and ever more certain that the greatest horror of medieval medicine is not death itself, but all the things done to delay it. You have long suspected that the body is a fickle servant, but only now do you grasp just how quickly it can become an enemy. Once, you could swing a sword for hours, ride from dawn until midnight, or hold court in armor heavier than most men's burdens. Now your flesh betrays you in the most humiliatingly ordinary ways, slowly, inexorably, and always a little worse than yesterday. It starts with your appetite, or rather the lack of it. Each morning, you are presented with bowls of broth, hunks of bread, bits of roasted fowl. The smell, once comforting, now turns your stomach. You force yourself to sip, to chew, to swallow, if only to keep up appearances for your watching household. But nothing stays down. The food sits heavy, turns sour, or simply refuses to go anywhere at all. Each day you eat less, until the idea of another spoonful feels like a punishment devised by an enemy. You are not surprised. You have seen this before. Old retainers, wounded soldiers, sickly cousins. It is the slow withering of the flesh that always comes before the end. Your family pretends not to notice, encouraging you, pleading with you, offering new dishes and old favorites in turn. You thank them, sometimes managing a weak smile, but the truth is inescapable. You are fading, one meal at a time. Next, your, your strength abandons you. What once was fatigue becomes frailty. What once was frailty becomes incapacity. You cannot lift your head without help. Your arms tremble when you reach for a cup. Your legs, traitorous things, refuse to carry your weight. Even sitting upright leaves you panting, as though you have run the length of the old Roman road. The servants must prop you up with pillows, shift your limbs when they cramp, turn you in bed so you do not grow sores. Your body has become an obstacle course for others, your dignity reduced to their careful hands. With weakness comes pain. Your joints swell, your skin prickles and aches, your muscles knot and twitch without warning. Sometimes you gasp aloud, startling the people around you. They rush to fetch more poultices, more herbs, more prayers. Nothing helps for long. Even the simplest movements are accompanied by a chorus of complaints from your battered frame. There are new marks on your skin, dark, angry blotches that spread like ink on wet parchment. A chill settles in your bones, not even banished by the hottest stones or thickest blankets. Your senses betray you as well. Your mouth tastes of metal and ashes. The world smells of sickness, of rot and old sweat, of herbs ground into hopelessness of your own failing body. Sounds come and go, the shuffling of slippers, the clatter of spoons, the distant tolling of bells, all warped and muffled by the thickness in your ears. Your sight dims and swims. Candle flames blur. Faces bend and flicker at the edges of your vision, sometimes familiar, sometimes strange. Worst of all is the thirst. No matter how much you drink, your mouth is always dry, your lips cracked and bleeding, your tongue heavy as stone. You swallow, and it feels as if you are swallowing sand. Water, wine, even the detestable medicinal brews, all are welcome, but none bring relief. The physician calls it a common complaint and prescribes yet another concoction that burns as it goes down. The degradation is not dramatic. It is not the grand, noble death of legend, with a hero coughing blood on the battlefield or a martyr rising to deliver final words. It is a slow, grinding decline, a day by day erosion of what you once took for granted. There is no moment of revelation, no sudden collapse, just the steady, pitiless unraveling of strength, of appetite, of function, of self. You begin to notice how others respond. The servants' faces are careful masks of concern. Matilda grows thinner, shadows growing beneath her eyes as she watches you lose ground. Henry tries to remain stoic, but his hands twist in his lap, and sometimes you catch him looking away, unwilling or unable to witness the loss. The physician is less hopeful now, more businesslike, his remedies delivered with a practiced, almost merciful detachment. Your world contracts further. You no longer visit the hall, no longer receive visitors, except those closest to you. The walls of your chamber become your horizon, the movement of light across the floor, the only measure of time. Your days are measured in small humiliations, needing help to roll over, to sit up, to drink, to be washed. You remember riding out in armor, leading men to war, and laugh at the memory, not because it is funny, but because it feels as if it happened to someone else. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, you try to will yourself back to strength, to command your body as you once commanded men. But the only answer is silence, a vast, indifferent silence that makes it clear you are no longer the master here. And so you drift, piece by piece, into frailty. Your body slips away from you, inch by inch, and all you can do is bear witness to the process. It is not heroic, not dignified, not even particularly memorable. But it is, you realize with a sort of bitter clarity, the final, inescapable truth of being human, that all strength in the end is borrowed, and all bodies, sooner or later, must be paid back in full. Eventually, exhaustion carves a hollow deep enough for a strange new feeling: acceptance. It creeps in quietly, arriving not as a revelation, but as the gradual yielding of every muscle, every stubborn thought, every protest. There comes a point where the fight grows quiet, where even pride loses its teeth, and you, Lord of Anjou, husband, father, master of 1,000 minor destinies, find yourself surrendering to the rhythm of decline. At first, you resist. You tell yourself this is merely a passing weakness, that one more sunrise will bring strength. You tally your lineage in your head, remembering all those ancestors who lived through wars and sieges, famines, and plagues. You try to summon their spirit, to convince yourself that the same blood runs in your veins, that you can outlast this too. But the blood feels thin and slow, and their shadows, so intimidating in life, have become only memories, flickering and insubstantial in the fever's dim light. Sometime in the long blur of days and nights, you stop asking how much time remains. You lose track of when you last left your bed, last stood unaided, last spoke a full sentence without pausing to gasp for breath. The demands of rule and ritual that once filled every waking hour have all receded. There are no more petitions to hear, no more disputes to settle, no more urgent messages from vassals in far off corners of the realm. The world outside your bedchamber goes on, but it no longer belongs to you. You notice that your anger has softened, replaced by a gentler kind of regret, a longing not for more power or more time, but for another evening by the hearth, another ride beneath the autumn sun, another careless laugh with your children when they were small enough to sit on your knee. The grand ambitions that once drove you now seem faintly ridiculous. What good is another acre of land, another castle, another treaty, when the simple pleasures have slipped from your grasp? With acceptance comes an unexpected relief. The pressure to recover, to perform, to fight, to be the Lord everyone needs you to be, dissolves. You begin to see yourself not as a failure or a disappointment, but as something smaller, sadder, and strangely more peaceful, a man at the end of his journey. For all its suffering, there is a comfort in no longer needing to prove anything to anyone. Even Matilda, who has always been both your fiercest ally and your most relentless critic, now sits with you in silence, her hand resting lightly on yours. There are no more exhortations to eat, no more promises that you will be up and about in the spring. The pretense has fallen away, leaving only the honesty of shared sorrow. The household adjusts around your resignation. The servants come and go with a quieter efficiency, speaking less and smiling more gently when they catch your gaze. The children, older now, approach you with a new reverence, as if sensing that you are already slipping into legend. Henry especially seems changed. He no longer asks about the future, no longer talks of campaigns or policy, but sits beside you, speaking softly of the things he remembers: a summer picnic, a hunting trip, the time you lifted him high above the crowd to watch the Christmas procession. These are the stories that matter now, and you listen with a gratitude that surprises you. Your faith, or what passes for it, shifts as well. The prayers of the monks, the blessings of the priest, the relics pressed into your hand, all these rituals have become background noise. If God intends to save you, you reason, he will do so with or without incense and Latin. You find yourself talking to him less formally, sometimes not at all. Instead, you talk to your ancestors, to your wife, to the ceiling beams above your bed. Sometimes you simply listen to the silence, letting it fill you with the odd peace that comes from knowing the struggle is almost over. There are still moments of pain, of fear, of childish anger at the unfairness of it all. You grieve for the things you will not see, your children grown, your lands prospering, the story of your house continuing. You worry about what will happen after, about Matilda's burdens, Henry's rivals, the loyalty of your knights. But these worries come and go, receding like the fever's waves, replaced each time by a longer stretch of calm. You do what you can to reassure those you love, but you know that in the end, you will leave them to make their own way. Night brings the most acceptance. Alone, surrounded by the hush of the sleeping castle, you let your thoughts wander where they will. You remember the faces of those who have already gone, your parents, old friends, loyal servants, even enemies whose grudges have faded with the years. You wonder if you will see them again, or if, as you have sometimes suspected, death is simply nothingness, a return to the quiet from which you once emerged. And you find that, in this acceptance, there is no terror, only a profound weariness, a desire to rest at last. The world, you realize, will go on without you. That knowledge, which once stung like betrayal, now feels like a blessing. So you close your eyes, not in defeat, but in resignation, content at last to let the story pass from your hands to those of the living. You are a man made by habit, by order, by the conviction that a word spoken from your lips could change the fortunes of a household, a town, a kingdom. So even now, as you slip into the borderlands between sleep and death, your mind clings to the shape of duty. There must be instructions, orders, a list of things to set right. To abdicate completely, even at the very end, feels like a dereliction of everything you have been. It begins, as so many things do, with lists. In feverish clarity or drifting stupor, you enumerate your lands and titles, your debts and obligations, the dowries owed to your daughters, the rights and holdings that must be reaffirmed for your sons. You call for your scribe, for your steward, for the priest, for anyone who can record and bear witness. The act of dictation is exhausting. Each sentence leaves you trembling, sweat breaking out on your brow. Still, you press on. The future, after all, is what you have always tried to master. You begin with the practical, the disposition of your property, the guardianship of your youngest children, the rights to a disputed pasture at the edge of Maine. You instruct that certain tenants are to be forgiven their arrears, that the old woodsman be allowed to remain in his cottage, that the miller's widow receive enough grain to survive the winter. These are gestures as much as commands, a final attempt to impose justice, to smooth the rough edges of your legacy. Then come the matters of inheritance. Henry, restless, uncertain, and newly grave, listens as you speak of loyalty, patience, and the perils of both ambition and pride. You try to fit a lifetime's wisdom into a few breathless sentences. You remind him of the importance of allies, the danger of promises made lightly, the need for generosity as well as strength. You see him nod, his jaw set, but you cannot be sure if the lessons are heard, let alone understood. That is the problem with advice. It is always for a future you will never see. Matilda stands by, composed as always, offering a steady hand as you sign and seal what must be signed and sealed. You know she will keep your promises if she can, and break them if she must. You do not envy her the burdens to come, the negotiations, the threats, the watchfulness that will become her constant companion. You want to say something comforting, something to reassure her that the worst is almost over. But she is too wise, and you are too tired, and in the end you say nothing at all. You call for the priest to witness your intentions, to sanctify your words with a prayer and a flourish of holy water. He nods solemnly, intoning the same blessings he has delivered 100 times before. For a moment, as you list the donations to the church, the arrangements for your burial, you catch a glimmer of relief in his eyes. Another soul safely shepherded, another family's drama poised to become history. You wonder how many times he has watched this scene play out. The Lord on his bed, the family at the foot, the future being parceled out like loaves of bread. Outside your chamber, the intrigue and anxiety continue. You can hear the muted shuffle of your counselors, the quiet disputes over precedents, the urgent conversations that always bloom in the shadow of approaching death. You know that every instruction you give will be weighed, debated, perhaps even ignored. The written word is strong, but not stronger than the ambitions and fears of those who must carry it out. Still, you persist. The need to order things, to speak your will into the future, is stronger than exhaustion. You ask after the castles, the treasury, the men at arms. You remind your counselors of old promises and new dangers. You tell your steward which tenants to trust and which to watch, which paths are safe for the next campaign season, which bridges must be mended before the rains return. In your mind, you are building a bulwark against chaos, a final act of rule, a last stand against oblivion. Yet beneath all this busyness, you sense the futility. You know how fragile these arrangements are, how quickly the living forget the wishes of the dead. You have seen other lords' last testaments honored or set aside, depending on the wind and the temper of their heirs. Even the most careful plans are undone by time, by rivalry, by plain bad luck. You find yourself clinging less to the specifics of your legacy and more to the hope that those who follow you will at least remember your intentions, if not your instructions. At last, your voice fails. You slump back into the pillows, your words trailing away, your breath rattling in your throat. The scribe gathers up the parchments, and the priest makes the sign of the cross. Henry squeezes your hand, his own already colder than you remember. Matilda smooths your brow, eyes shining with something you cannot name: pride, sorrow, fear, or perhaps all three. You have done what you could. The future will come, shaped by your wishes or in spite of them. You hope, quietly, almost without faith, that you have left enough for your family to endure. You close your eyes, too tired for regret or anxiety, and let the noise of your household recede into the distance. Outside, the world tilts gently toward whatever comes next. Your last instructions, scattered like seeds, are left to find their own uncertain soil. The work of the living is about to begin, and you, at last, are finished with your own. The final night arrives almost imperceptibly, not with a sudden storm or dramatic pronouncement, but as a slow, thickening quiet. By now, you sense the change, though no one has dared speak its name. The castle moves in a subdued hush, as if the walls themselves are bracing for your absence. The routines of illness, the compresses, the drafts, the endless whispering slow down, then cease. There is nothing left to be done. You lie in your bed, propped against a mountain of pillows, every joint aching, every movement an effort. Your senses have grown strange and selective. The flicker of candlelight seems too bright, every whisper too loud, but voices spoken clearly come from a long distance away, as though drifting to you from another shore. The air is thick, heavy with the scents of sweat and incense, herbs, and the slow decay of flesh. You inhale with effort, exhale with relief, aware of each breath as a conscious act. Your family gathers close, summoned by the physician's soft, ambiguous words. It will be a difficult night. You may want to stay near. Matilda takes her place by your side, her hands folded, face set in that composed, unreadable way you have come to love and resent in equal measure. Henry stands behind her, shoulders squared, eyes rimmed with red from sleeplessness and the grimness of anticipation. The younger children are kept at a distance, but you sense their presence, a scuffle in the hallway, a suppressed sob, the cautious hush of servants trying to shepherd them away from the threshold of your world. Time becomes elastic. Minutes crawl, hours stretch and tangle. The fever has faded, replaced by a cold that seeps through the marrow of your bones. You shiver under layers of furs, but the chill is inside you now, beyond the reach of warmth. The familiar rituals continue, prayers murmured, cloths adjusted, water offered, but their purpose is no longer recovery, only comfort. Even your physician's face is resigned. He no longer offers remedies, only silence and a thin veneer of dignity. The world outside your window is shrouded in darkness, broken only by the dull, uncertain gleam of torches in the courtyard. Somewhere, a bell sounds the hour, though you cannot count how many times you have heard it. The ordinary noises of the castle Doors creaking, boots on flagstones, horses in the distant stables are muted, as if the whole household has agreed to hold its breath. Even the dogs, normally restless at night, curl close to the hearth, silent and watchful. Your thoughts drift, barely tethered to the present. You think of roads left untraveled, messages left unsent, and faces from earlier years, some beloved, some forgotten, all circling the edge of consciousness. Memory is a river now, sweeping you along with a gentle but irresistible current. You find yourself less afraid of its direction, more curious to see where it leads. There are moments of lucidity, brief and bright. You squeeze Matilda's hand, trying to convey gratitude and apology at once. She leans in, her voice low and sure, repeating words you cannot quite follow, but that you recognize as comfort. Henry leans over you, trying to find something appropriate to say. You want to tell him that he will do well, that you have faith in him, that all your lessons, harsh and loving alike, were meant for this moment. Instead, you manage only a smile and a pressure of his fingers. He bows his head, understanding more than he will ever admit. As the night deepens, you slip in and out of sleep. Dreams and waking blend together, snatches of old prayers, the smell of earth after rain, the distant music of a lute somewhere below. Sometimes you wake with a start, certain you have heard your own name, called from the far side of the room, but there is only Matilda and the faint rhythmic breathing of your son. The household keeps vigil. Servants pass in and out, their faces drawn, their steps careful. The priest returns, offering final blessings, tracing the cross on your forehead, murmuring the rites he has practiced for half his life. You feel the weight of centuries in that gesture, how many deaths he has witnessed, how many final nights he has ushered into history. You are aware, in a detached way, of the pageantry of it all, the candles, the incense, the prayers, the tears. Outside, the first gray suggestion of dawn creeps through the window. You have survived the night, but only in the technical sense. Your breath comes shallow now, your heartbeat a faint, irregular flutter. You sense, as surely as you have ever sensed anything, that your presence in this world is measured in heartbeats, not hours. The final kindness is that you are not alone. As the light grows, Matilda's hand still holds yours. Henry's vigil has not faltered, and the prayers of your household mingle in the air around you. You are a man, not a legend, frail, diminished, but cherished, witness to the end. It is not a heroic passing. It is not a peaceful sleep. It is simply the last, longest night, your life dwindling to a thin, flickering thread stretched between memory and oblivion. And so you wait, not in hope, not in terror, but in weary expectation for the morning that will not truly be yours. The first true light of morning slides across the chamber floor, cold and indifferent, announcing that the world will continue regardless of what happened in the night. You feel the weight of it, heavy and final, even as your body is already slipping past caring. This is it, the moment that has hovered for days, anticipated and dreaded, and, if everyone is honest, expected. It is not dramatic. It is not poetic. There are no final speeches, no thunderclap revelations. There is only the hush of tired voices, the slow drip of melted wax, the scuff of shoes on old stone. Death, it turns out, does not care for ceremony. It comes as a kind of forgetting, a gentle loosening of the world's grip. You exhale, and then you do not inhale again. You are vaguely aware, in the last moments, of Matilda's hand in yours, Henry's quiet weeping, the priest's whispered prayers. You feel warmth and coolness, light and shadow, but these are only the last echoes of the senses you once trusted to anchor you in the world. If you think anything, it is not about glory or defeat, but about how strangely ordinary this feels. You are not the first to die here, nor will you be the last. Even your own death seems content to join the long list of things that are now beyond your control. Outside the chamber, the castle stirs. Servants move with new purpose. A message is already being prepared for the distant relatives and waiting allies. The physician, for all his careful attention and endless remedies, bows his head, perhaps in relief, perhaps in resignation. The priest, efficient now, wipes the oil from your brow and closes your eyes, muttering a blessing you cannot hear. There is a sense of business resuming, a quiet shift from crisis to aftermath. The world is practiced in the rituals of death. Matilda does not cry, not at first. She simply sits very still, her hand still resting on yours, her face set and empty, as if waiting for instructions that will not come. Henry steps away from the bed, uncertain, suddenly older, suddenly the center of everyone's attention. The household, servants, retainers, guards, begin their silent procession through the room, crossing themselves, bowing, mumbling half remembered prayers. Some look genuinely sorrowful, others are merely relieved that the suspense has ended. The formalities begin almost at once. A shroud is brought, the windows are opened a crack to let your soul escape, or, more likely, to banish the staleness of death from the room. The bells in the chapel toll, a slow, leaden note that carries out across the fields and over the river. In the courtyard, news spreads faster than any horse could ride. The Lord is dead. Long live the new Lord. The rituals are automatic. The washing and binding of your body, the laying out for the household to pay their respects, the low drone of prayers and chants. Someone begins the tally of your possessions, the cataloging of debts and obligations, the endless reckoning that accompanies every passing of power. Your name is already being invoked in council, in the kitchens, in the stables, not with awe or fear, but as a point of reference, a marker on the slow, winding road of the family's history. There is no surprise in any of it. Your death was expected, the preparations were made. In truth, many in the castle will remember this as a relief. The end of waiting, the end of hope and dread suspended in equal measure. You are mourned, certainly, but with the practical, muted grief of people who have seen this scene too many times to believe it is exceptional. Death is, after all, the only truly reliable visitor to a medieval lord's house. If you are remembered in the coming days, it will be for your absence as much as your presence. Your seat at the table will be filled by Henry, your rooms rearranged, your banners lowered and replaced. Life will settle quickly into new routines. For all your titles, your conquests, your careful instructions, you are now another story to be told around the fire, another chapter in the family annals, another portrait on the wall for dust to gather upon. You are dead, and no one is surprised. This is not tragedy or farce, but the simple arithmetic of existence in a world where every birth is a prologue to this moment. You leave behind a wife, a son, a house full of obligations and memories, and a story that, in the end, is as ordinary and as unremarkable as anyone else's. The sun rises a little higher. The bells toll their final note. Somewhere in the halls of your castle, laughter will return before the week is out, and a new set of worries will replace the old. For now, you are at rest, not glorified, not vilified, just gone. Your death one more fact for the scribes to record and the world to absorb without missing a step. By the time your body cools, the castle is already changing shape. A page is sent riding hard to the bishop with formal notice, another to the king's officers, who will want their due. A team of servants strips your bed, scrubbing away the final traces of sweat, fever, and the endless parade of remedies. The relics are quietly returned to the chapel. The room, so recently the axis of the household, becomes simply a room again, one destined in due course for another ailing lord. There is a brief interlude for grief, as required by custom and genuine feeling alike. The priest intones prayers over your shrouded form, his Latin as steady and implacable as the bells tolling from the chapel tower. Matilda weeps, or perhaps she simply bows her head, wrapped tight in the black shawl she wore at her mother's funeral. Henry stands, awkward and pale, learning the art of receiving condolences, a skill he will need, perhaps sooner than he hopes. In the kitchens, cooks prepare extra loaves, salted pork, and barrels of ale. The wake must be fed, and the business of mourning is conducted with an eye to the appetite. Your tenants arrive, some to bow their heads in respect, others to confirm which rules still stand, which debts might be forgiven, which portions of land may be up for grabs. The stewards and scribes move through the halls with armfuls of parchment, ticking off your possessions, arguing over the precise accounting of livestock, rents, and tithes. Outside, life resumes. The markets open, peasants scythe the fields, children chase dogs in the muddy yard. A few old women cross themselves as they pass the chapel, muttering about the passing of a stern but just lord. One or two recall the winter you remitted the rent, others the summer you raised it twice. Your memory is already being flattened into stories, useful, comforting, or simply convenient. The funeral itself is a muddle of pageantry and practicality. Your body is wrapped, anointed, lowered into the earth with the full weight of rank and ritual, a procession of clergy, the slow march of banners, the whispered speculation about the health and prospects of your heir. The grave is sealed, the stone set. If you are lucky, there will be prayers for your soul at least until the year's end. If not, your name will linger only as long as the gossip lasts. Afterwards, Matilda and Henry receive guests in the hall, nobles with guarded smiles, widows with practiced sighs, distant cousins with thinly veiled ambition. The talk turns quickly from mourning to matters of succession, alliances, debts, and opportunity. Your life, which felt so singular, so central, has become a ledger of assets and liabilities, a chessboard rearranged by those who remain. Servants trade stories about your temper, your habits, the time you frightened a bishop by refusing to kneel, the time you drank a Norman knight under the table. Your death is already acquiring its own mythology, shaped less by truth than by the needs of those who survive you. The tale will become shorter, funnier, sharper in the telling. Already, you can sense your story turning from flesh to rumor, from memory to anecdote. Henry, for his part, wastes little time. He issues orders, revisits your last instructions, consults with Matilda and your most trusted counselors. He has learned, as you did, that leadership is less about vision than about endurance, the endless patience for grievances, the daily grind of accounts and promises, the balancing of threats and favors. He does his best to mourn, but the demands of the present pull him forward. There is always another letter to sign, another vassal to placate, another restless ambition to soothe or subdue. The castle, once so heavy with the rituals of your dying, soon finds its balance again. The dogs return to their favorite spots by the hearth. The children's laughter, hushed for a day, rings out once more. The guards at the gate change shifts, the same as before. The world, you realize, if you are capable of realizing anything now, needs no permission to keep turning. In the quiet that follows, your absence becomes a kind of silence in the household, a pause where your voice once echoed, a shadow at the head of the table, a memory half glimpsed in the firelight. For a while, perhaps a generation, your deeds and misdeeds will be weighed in family arguments, in village tales, in the chronicler's dry, unsparing prose. But the tally will shrink with each telling, your story reduced to a line in the archives, a name on a stone. The clerks and monks do their work, recording your dates and titles in careful script. The family arms are carved on your tomb, the appropriate prayers recited. In time, someone may commission a song or a stained glass window. More likely, you will be remembered as the Lord who died in the year of a wet summer, just before the old bridge washed away, just after the king rode north. You become a fixed point, a reference, a footnote. And so it goes. The world moves on. No catastrophe, no miracle, just the unyielding continuity of days and generations, the long memory of stone and river and field. In the end, you are neither hero nor villain, not even the star of your own final act. You are like everyone else, folded gently into history's indifferent embrace, while life gathers up its tasks and carries on. Sleep, at last, is uninterrupted. The bells ring, then fall silent. The castle settles, and outside, beyond your quiet grave, the fields are green and growing, the world unimpressed by loss, already looking ahead.